All right, folks, welcome. It's not mic'd up, Mike.
So what are we having a conversation about?
This is Spiritual Formation for the Family, a new podcast. This is your first time on this podcast.
It is my first time on this podcast.
Welcome.
I don't know what to do now. Al was messing with me though.
He was messing with you. Did he just like sneak up and like adjust something and then walk away? I mean, that was so
as long
smooth.
as long as he doesn't come up and like lick his hand and smooth my hair down, then I'm okay.
You try that. All right. So here's what we got going on. We are in our last week of our generosity series that our family ministry has been working through.
Great.
This week is basically just we're not going to be able to cover everything, but the goal is to just give best practices for how we can practically go about generosity.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've been doing, and I would imagine, I don't know exactly when, people will either get this on a Wednesday or a Thursday. Okay. But they've already listened to Dwayne Stark talk about fostering bridges and how people can give to that. They've already heard Rhonda Edwards talk about living alternatives. Mm-hmm. So for you actually are part of a nonprofit.
I am a part of a nonprofit. Yeah.
It's a Central Baptist Church. Isn't that where you work? Is that something like that? Yeah.
Right.
So anyways, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about, you show up to Central Baptist Church, and by the way, we only ask that church members give to Central Baptist Church.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not asking anybody else to do that.
No, we never make pleas to the community. We don't put in grant applications. We don't do anything like that.
Yeah. And we have talked about tithe a little bit already on this podcast, to where we actually use some of the wisdom that you passed on that I think is really good. It's not you don't give much, but I mean, this was one of the things.
Okay.
So now we're only down to 3 things left that you.
We got to make them last.
We got to make them last.
Stretch.
But you told me one time that 10% needs to be the starting place. As we're like trying to establish our own personal budgets, mm-hmm. that 10% needs to be the starting place. And from there, we can either adjust and say, you know what, maybe I can't give 10%. Maybe I need to give more than 10%. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
The only thing I would say is there's sort of this mindset that you tithe. You give 10% of your income because that is the biblical method of tithing. And it's actually not. I mean, that was sort of something that was talked about under the Old Covenant. We're not under the Old Covenant anymore. And if you look at even all the tithes that were required under the Old Covenant, they weren't all 10%. Mm. But if you think about all the money if you think of it this way, that God owns everything and He gives us. I mean, whatever job you have, whatever income stream that you have, God is ultimately the source of that. And if you think, wow, and what He wants to do is He gives that to us to be managers of it.
Yeah.
And, well, what if I only kept 90%? Mm. Think of it like that. What if I only kept 90%? Now, I am well aware that in this economy, and I'm just going to tell you, maybe you didn't want me talking about this.
No, go ahead,
But the reality is, I don't know how a young family with kids makes it right now. I mean, it is hard. And I'm the dad of 3 young families with kids, and they all struggle, and they are hard workers, and they're doing everything they can. But it is hard out there if you don't have, some sort of real high income career field, like if you're not a doctor, already in some sort of corporate executive position where you're making big bucks. I don't know how families can do it like on one income. And I know there are families out there doing it, and it requires great sacrifice, but I know it's hard. I also know that a lot of people start thinking about giving after they get themselves into a deep financial hole. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I also know that inflation is kicking everybody in the teeth right now. It's kicking me in the teeth. You know, I mean, we've had to cut our Christmas budget this year. Yeah. Because I mean, it just costs a lot of money to live right now.
And this is not a political statement at all.
No.
I think that we have to acknowledge that 2020 was a bomb of a year in a lot of ways. But I was talking with Matt Montgomery the other day. He's kind of our church financial guru.
He is. That's what he does for a living. He's a financial planner and
I think
guy.
I want to say he told me that like inflation over the last 4 years was 24%.
Yeah, it's costing
it's unprecedented.
You. If you didn't get a 24% raise, you have taken a pay cut every year.
Right.
And if you have budgeted and been wise and said, well, this is what we're going to live on, and then basically your income has been cut by 24%. That's a fourth.
Yeah.
I know it's hard. So when we come to people and we say something like, hey, think about just going from 0 to 10% of your income, we might as well be saying, can you just go ahead and give us $1 million a year, right?
Give us your house.
Right.
Give us your car.
And I know people are out there thinking, oh, and I don't want people to get this defeatist mindset that says, well, I might as well just not do anything. So what I would say is, can you work up to it? And I've heard people say, well, if you're given 9% of your income, then you're just only, you're 90% obedient. You're not doing what God calls you. And I reject that.
Yeah.
Because again, the New Testament, I'm actually got a sermon coming up on this about how New Testament principle of giving is that giving should be not coerced.
Yes, yeah.
It should be between you and the Lord, right? You should decide. It should be joyful. Mm-hmm. And it should be sacrificial.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say, well, I can't give to the church, but I'm going to go buy a new $85,000 pickup. Well, okay, so you need a new car. Does it have to be an $85,000 pickup?
Right. Yeah.
Could you buy a used one for $40,000?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand you need a pick. And, just things like that. So what we want to do is help people just reorient their whole thinking, right, about stewardship in that, well, maybe I do have that payment on an $85,000 pickup right now. I can't get out from under it. I'm upside down on my payments. Okay, well, what's a good starting place for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Could you start at 1%?
Take steps.
Yeah, take steps. And I think that's the approach I want to put out there for people.
And I think, even you've already said this, and I'd just say it in maybe even a slightly different way. If you are paying, say, if you are being generous with 9% of your income, and your heart is a generous heart, then I think that there's a possibility that person on 9% is being far more generous than some person at 19%.
It could be.
Depending on, I think of the widow's mite, how Jesus, he bragged on her because she was giving from.
I actually had a man say to me one time, he said, Mike, he was in a very lucrative career, and he said, Mike, I'm just going to tell you that for me to give 10% of my income would be insulting to God.
Yeah.
And he said, his words were, he said, you cannot believe how much money I make. He said, I make so much money that for me to keep 90% would not be godly.
Yeah.
And he said, and what he said is, so right off the top, I give 10% to my church. He said, I believe that New Testament giving, my first gift needs to be to my local church because that is God's.
Which, by the way, I think that the New Testament is actually pretty clear on that.
I think so too. This is the local church is God's means for doing missions and ministry in the world. The
curriculum that we used, and in one of the podcasts, I did make a more definitive statement on it. Mm-hmm. In the curriculum that we used, I thought it provided some great wisdom. It was hesitant to come in and say, hey, this is the first, to make a very strong statement, hey, this is the first place to be generous. Now, I think in session 3 or 4, it did talk about taking care of the needs of the people around you, primarily your church.
Yeah.
But I would say very strongly, and maybe I'm not giving John Mark Comer and his folks the proper kudos, but I would say very strongly that the New Testament teaches first take care of the church family.
Yeah, and the great thing is, if your local church is healthy, which I believe Central is, and is being good stewards of the gifts you give, then through giving to your local church, you're giving to a lot of things outside your local church.
Yes.
And so it is, to me, the most biblical and wise way to reach my community and to meet the needs of the community. I mean, there are so many things that we do that aren't even in our budget that we do to help people in our community and meet very real needs.
Well, we got the Central Christmas Store going on right now.
We have the Central
Christmas
That wasn't
Store.
in our budget. Yeah. We collected 200 and something shoe boxes to send to kids overseas so they can have Christmas presents in impoverished, underdeveloped countries.
Yeah.
And so many more things.
So here's where I think that I wanted to ask specific questions and allow you the space to answer them. I don't know. I don't think that we actually have the. So this podcast is specifically for Central Baptist people.
Yeah.
We're going to be unapologetic about that.
Yeah.
There might be other people listening, but this is specifically for Central Baptist people. I don't necessarily see us having a problem of having.
Sorry, my watch is making.
Oh,
noise.
your watch is.
Yeah.
Go from this is specifically for Central Baptist.
Okay. So this is a podcast specifically for Central Baptist people. There may be other people listening, but that's our purpose.
Yeah.
I don't think that we have too big of a problem at the church where people are looking at our budget and saying, "Oh, we don't trust that, so we're going to withhold tithes and offerings."
I have yet to hear of anyone doing that.
I don't see that as being this problem. But I did want us to create space to talk about our budget and what it looks like. Some of the places where I actually think that we're incredibly healthy on.
Yep.
And just kind of give you the space to just talk about our budget and some of the accountability that goes into that to make sure that money actually is spent on what is in the line item.
Yeah. So let me talk about that. Just briefly, I want to say something up front. Is one of the things we really value here at Central when it comes to finances and really everything is transparency.
Yeah.
And we put out for one thing, we have quarterly business meetings. And at those quarterly business meetings, Matt Montgomery, our treasurer, gets up and gives a financial report. Everybody gets a copy of the financial report. And it is free for all. I mean, you can ask any question you want. I've literally had people ask questions about, well, what's this $130 here? There's something, which in a budget, we have a $1.7 something million budget. That's a very small expense. But if you want to know, we don't make fun of you for. Those are legitimate questions.
Right.
We want you to have every question answered. Our financial secretary actually prints out a monthly budget report that all you have to do is call the church and say, "Hey, can you email me the monthly budget report, or can you print one off and I come get it every month?" Absolutely. And I would say, if you're in a church that doesn't want you to know where the money's going, that is a problem. And of course the budget. And I brought this just to show people. This is a thick book. This is the 2025 proposed church budget, and what this does is this breaks down every single line item into minutia. So we don't publish one of these every month.
Right.
We publish it's about a 4 or 5 page. It's got the categories of everything. But we tell our members, if you have questions deeper than this, come sit down with our financial secretary, make an appointment with our treasurer, and sit down, and they will pull out the big book. They will show you receipts. There is literally nothing in here that we won't tell you about. We want you to know where every penny goes.
Yeah.
For one thing, we're not ashamed of it. For another thing, if it turns out that the church thinks, well, this is an illegitimate way to use our funds, we're a Baptist church. We can change it. Our church votes on this budget every year. We have a long discussion.
We have a finance committee that can come in and say, "Hey,
yeah, we do.
We need to make adjustment," and no staff is on that. No paid staff is on that.
Yeah, I'm technically on the finance committee.
Okay.
But I'm one member. There is a staff person for each committee.
Okay,
yeah. I am part of that. And so this is what we do. But if you want, I can just give I've got a broad breakdown here of where the money goes. And so basically, if you look at big categories, and I'm painting with a bit of a broad brush, but and let me start with missions. And missions covers so many things, and I've got like a 5-page summary document here. If you let's say you give $100 to Central, roughly $14 goes right into missions outside of Central.
Okay.
What does that mean? 10% goes to the cooperative program of the Southern Baptist Convention. It goes to the Texas Baptist Convention. Your money is helping to fund ministries on college campuses all over the state of Texas. We're funding refugee centers along the river. We don't get into the politics of immigration down there. What we do is we alleviate suffering, meet needs to the people who are down there and suffering. We are doing disaster relief.
Church plants.
Church planting where there aren't churches. I mean, all kinds of stuff. 1.5% goes to the Dogwood Trails Baptist Association. That's our local association, about 90-something churches, and we're doing ministry. We have a student ministry at Trinity Valley Community College. We're doing all kinds of leadership training. We have a hospitality house. It's basically a little hotel across the street from the prison outside of Palestine, and where families who travel long distances, and bear in mind, these families aren't criminals, but they're coming to visit their loved ones. We give them a free night to stay. We provide all their meals, and we share the gospel with every single one of them that comes through the door.
That's cool. I didn't know that's what that was about.
Oh, man. Every weekend, that place is filled with people, and so much ministry.
What's that called, the Hospitality House?
It's called the Hospitality House, yeah. And so we've got so many things on here that we do. Like I know you did something with the Director of Hope, which people come in here. Bear in mind, we are not equipped to do a true benevolence ministry,
Right.
people that need rent assistance, people that need groceries. So the local churches pool our resources with a community ministry called Hope. And so we give in our budget to Hope, we give to Living Alternatives, a pregnancy crisis center. We give to the Crisis Center, which has a safe house for abused women and children.
Yeah.
Synergy Message, Pastors Hope Network, Elohim Love International Missions, that is ministries, that is missions in Africa. Impact Multiplied, that's missions up in the Pacific Northwest, Ensenada, Mexico, El Faro, El Salvador. Kingdom Air Corps, which trains pilots for the mission field. I've got a church plant in New Hampshire that we'll be partnering with. This Fostering Bridges, which I know you've done something about. And so we've got all of these things. So when I say missions, that's 14%. But then if you look at just our ministries to those under 18, student, children, preschool, that's another 5%. And then when you look at, if you really look at missions and ministry, including we have our Central Children's Care, which is a 2-day-a-week preschool, which is purely a ministry. We charge for that, but we invest. We lose money. It's not a money-making business. We lose money. In fact, we have $75,000 a year that goes just to that from our church.
And if you don't mind, I'll just interject on that right there. If somebody's saying, okay, well, why are y'all investing in that? I've had all three of my daughters have gone through that program. Yeah. That's probably been the primary source of spiritual formation outside of our home for them, even more so than Sunday school and things. And we have a great Sunday school program.
Well, and how many church families are now members of Central because their first foray into our church was through the Central Church? There's a lot of them.
Yeah, there is.
And so if you look at missions and ministry, that's about 30% of our budget. So about 30% of our budget is for ministering people specifically outside the walls of Central. And then if you even look at other places, we've got money here and there that goes outside too. Everybody's always concerned, well, gosh, you got a big building and it takes this much money and all that. It does. Yeah. It does. I mean, everybody's heard the story of what our insurance, if your car insurance is going up, if your homeowner's insurance is going up, the churches, literally, the landscape for churches is so bad that I have friends pastoring churches that they just had to cancel their insurance policies because they can't afford it. Fortunately, we're able to do that. But I mean,
that's scary.
We paid $185,000 for insurance last year.
Well, that's scary for those guys. I mean, like they're not making that decision. Like, oh, I'm glad to have that off my back. I mean, like that's
what
putting
they're doing
a burden
is saying,
on them.
We're praying to God we don't have a fire or a tornado or something like that because we're just out of luck.
Yeah.
And so if you look at our operating expenses, which would encompass, I mean, that's our printing, our copies, our office supplies, our upkeep, our insurance, our utilities, everything. That's only about 24%.
Yeah, okay.
So that's just under a quarter. And then the largest item is our personnel budget. And,
okay, so before you say the percent,
okay,
let's just go ahead and acknowledge really quickly that this is an area that churches come under fire a lot about.
They do.
I actually think that we knock this out of the park.
We do, because so what the experts in this kind of field will tell you is that 50 to 55% of your budget should go to personnel.
Yeah.
Ours is 47%.
And is that including the CCC folks too?
No, that's not including the CCC. Gotcha. If you throw CCC in there, we're at 51.7%.
So even with all those teachers and the director and things like that?
Directors, teachers, CCC and everything. But I'm just talking about our church staff, which is our office personnel, our custodial personnel, our ministerial staff, then you're looking at 47%.
47, okay.
And the truth is, we have so much ministry happening that it can't be, what we do cannot be done on the backs of volunteers.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because in us addressing this, we're really not addressing anybody here at Central that has come to us with something. We're really just kind of saying, hey, this is what people outside are talking about in their churches, and so we want to address it.
Well, they're thinking that they're just not telling you. No. People don't mind telling you when they're thinking something.
That's never been a problem.
That's never been a problem, which is good. I mean, we want an environment that's healthy enough where people can share when they have an issue with something. we don't want people. We're not a cult.
Right.
We don't want to tell people you just keep it to yourself. It's like one of the sayings that the Mormons have is when you go to church leadership with a question, hey, I'm really wondering about this, is they say, we put those questions on a shelf. That's the phrase they use. And that means we're just going to set that over here and not worry. You just go on about your business. We'll take care of everything.
Right, yeah.
We're not like that. We're going to engage you. We may not always come to the conclusion that everyone's happy on something. In fact, sometimes decisions are made we disagree with.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, there's just a lot of love here.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of respect here that, yeah, we can agree to disagree and we can keep on loving each other.
absolutely.
And you don't see that everywhere.
You don't see that
And
everywhere.
and there's times, and I'm making it sound easy. No, there are times that it's hard.
Yeah.
But I do see that at Central Baptist. I see that as like one of the biggest virtues that we have is just this fidelity to one another, that regardless of whatever disagreement we may have, that there's going to be.
I mean, there was a disagreement made, or I disagreed with a decision made a few years ago, and it wasn't like that, but it was a decision I felt very strongly about.
Yeah.
You know what it is?
Nope.
Of course you don't, because I'm not talking about it, right? I mean, it's just.
I got you.
Hey, we talked about something. The decision went the way I would have preferred it not go. Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And I am for that because I trust the Lord with His church.
Yeah. I agree.
And it could be that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wrong once.
Most of the
before.
time you are, but I mean, you said I was wrong once before.
Yeah.
What was that?
I'm not telling.
Go ahead.
I'm not telling.
Tell
No.
us. All right. Well, like I said, I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity for our people because as we're talking about all these nonprofits in town, we are a nonprofit, and I do think that Central is very keen on trying to give to Central first.
Yep. And again,
so-
through that, we work with a lot of the other ministries in town.
Yeah. In fact, all the ministries that we're talking about this week are ministries that we work
In fact,
with.
let me say this. People say, we hear all about these church plants and mission trips. What about right here at home? Well, for one thing, we're doing it.
Yeah.
A lot of times you just don't hear as much about it
Yeah.
because when we do a mission trip like that, we're going to go to El Salvador once a year.
Yeah.
But we're giving to hope and dealing with people and helping people find shelter and home and food every day.
So one of the things I have found is pretty staggering is the amount of ministry that is not done through like a program of a church,
Yeah.
but like it's just done in this town. If you go back and you look at the root of it,
Yeah.
the amount of Central Baptist people that you're going to find there, it's pretty staggering.
It really is. And stuff that's not in the budget. I mean, man, I know people in our church that are sharing the gospel, that are meeting needs, that are doing real stuff. I was in a meeting with a guy today who is, he was just talking about this community ministry that he's involved in that has just taken off, that he is starting.
Yeah.
And it's not even something that needs money, and it's just something that has come from his heart. There's a group of people in the community that is Central,
Yeah.
doing ministry in our neighborhood.
Yeah, in our community. No,
Yeah.
I agree. All right, well, that's a wrap, Mike.
Great.
Hey, good job today.
You too, Coby. Well done.
Thanks, man.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.